Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. We are in Daniel chapter 7, and this we're, 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 we've come to a kind of a switch in the book. The first 6 chapters of Daniel was more of the kind of a narrative of Daniel's life, as well as, of course, we had some prophecies, some things that he also experienced, which takes him from the Babylonian uh, empire as a young teenager to I think, the second ruler in the Mede and Persian kingdom. And so Daniel's time brings us to pretty much the end of, I'm going to say right before the end of the 70-year exile. We'll get into that in chapter 9, how this came about. So, a lot of the prophecies that we're going to talk about, especially in chapter 7, maybe chapter 8, corresponds to chapter 6, the time of Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, Belshazzar, who, if you will remember, met his end when he brought out the vessels, the gold vessels that Babylon had took from the temple of God when they destroyed the temple of God. And then he brought them out and they drank from them. It was sort of like this insult to God. And so as they were drinking from the gold vessels, a hand appeared. Belshazzar seized his hand, probably thought he was drunk at first, but this hand begins to write on the wall. And basically, it was, your time has come to you challenge God. And so the end of the interpretation of the writings was, first of all, you decided to challenge God, defy him, and then God has caused you to, he weighed your life in the balance, and you have found lacking. And then he says, your kingdom has been given over to the Medes and Persians. That very night that he saw this hand right here, he was conquered. The very night he was conquered. Now, as we get over to chapter 7, in chapter 7, um, remember in chapter 2, we see that Nebuchadnezzar is given this image, the vision of this image. And what this image is, it is a prophetic picture, a prophetic timeline of all of the world ruling kingdoms. And at this time, from Nebuchadnezzar's times to the end of the world, let me go to my better image here of this. Um, and um, and so uh, there's so much I want to prep for this, because this is going to be a fascinating study. But we need to kind of understand what is being said here with this study. Now, this is, to me, I like this image better, these artists' rendition. Okay, so in Daniel chapter 2, this is what Nebuchadnezzar saw. This is what Daniel interpreted. And he said he saw 5 world ruling kingdoms. And Nebuchadnezzar at the time was the head of gold, and then the chest of arms of silver. This is what was explained in Daniel chapter 2. The chest and arms of silver was the kingdom of the Mede and the Persians. The belly and thighs of bronze was the kingdom of ancient Greece. Then the legs of iron was the Roman kingdoms. And then the kingdom of the feet of iron and clay. Now they have restored Rome, and that The scripture does not say that. It does not say that it is to restore Rome. I think they think that because of the iron, paucity of iron, but the prophecy itself doesn't say that. Now, in Daniel chapter 2, it says, during the kingdom of the one at the feet of the iron and clay, you see this rock comes out that is not made with hands and strike the image at its feet, which is, again, extremely important. Strike the image at its feet and destroys the image, which is, again, the imagery here is the destroying the human government. Now, we have to go back for a moment when we talk about prophecy. That prophecy, when we and as we are moving through our entire study through the Bible, which we're not that far from the end, by the way. After Daniel, we just got 3 more books. No, yeah, 3 more books, and then we would have been through the entire Bible. Okay, which we're going to start again. Just so you know, we're going to start again. So in the section of the writings of the prophets, we said that when we break down the writings of the prophets, the minor prophets, all except 3, the last 3, as they are arranged in our Bibles, the last 3 books of the Bible, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, and Malachi, they are post-prophetic books. Okay, post-prophetic books. Then the rest of the minor prophets began their prophecies about 200 to 250 years before the fall of Babylon. They come up to time corresponding with the book of Isaiah, time-wise. And the idea is that God begins to warn Israel to turn from their sins. He warns them of the judgment, the severe judgment that would happen. But then also during the writing of the prophets, we also see the prophecies of Israel's restoration. We also see God's judgment of the nations, of the world. We also see God's prophecies of the coming Messiah. Okay? So the Babylonian exile was a turning point in the affairs of human history. It was a turning point. And this is why what we see in these books here, this image, where we went from what were certainly mighty nations. They were the most powerful nations, empires such as the Assyrians, the Egypt, the Egyptians, but they did not dominate the world. These kingdoms dominate the world. Okay, and then they bring us up to the very coming of Jesus Christ, and then we see prophetically what Jesus is going to do when he comes, and that's the important thing here. We see this. So now also you could say prophecy is progressive. We're going to see that in our studies here. If you are reading, if you start your prophecies with, let's say, Joel, Hosea, and this is why I studied those prophecies in more of a chronological order to get the feel of the prophetic voice, what you see the times that was going on here. So that when we get to Jeremiah, you see a different prophetic voice, and basically the death of the nations. When we get to Ezekiel, Ezekiel is one of the early deportees, right? People who were deported to Babylon. Daniel around the same time, but they were deported to 2 different areas of the Babylonian Empire. Um, but all of them have the same thing where we see the prophecies of Israel, the restoration of Israel, the future kingdom of Israel, them being gathered back into the land. That's prophetic. Okay, that doesn't change. The church, the Christian church is not any, there's no scripture that says that um, um, there is no scripture that says that the church is ever Israel. That's just, it's just not. Okay. But that's a whole nother reason why that goes on, but we're not going to get into that. But you see prophetically, and if you read prophetically, we have enough even with as we begin chapter 7 that this will give us a prophetic understanding, so that when we get to places like Matthew 24, how about this? Zechariah 14, Matthew 24, the book of Revelations, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. This is the continuity of prophecy. Excuse me, the continuity of prophecy. Okay, so this image now, as we get into chapter 7, so from chapter 7 to chapter 12, it's basically further and a more in-depth explanation of this image right here. In other words, what we're going to see is this explanation. And again, it is going to be a fascinating thing. And we're going to see the progressive nature of Revelation. So here's what I'm going to say. So at one point, you're going to see the vision given, because at the point now of chapter 7, where Nebuchadnezzar is already gone off the scene. So he's died, he's passed away or whatever. And the kingdom is passed on to Belshazzar. And so now chapter 7 is corresponding with chapter 6 in terms of doing that kingdom before it comes to an end, and with the handwriting on the wall. Okay. So with that, let's get to it. Again, this is going to be a fascinating study. And then one that, if you want to understand prophecy, so let me say this: prophecy, as I said, is simple, but exhaustive. So one of the things now in these upcoming chapters, you're going to see various of the 5 kingdoms explained. Okay, and one that's going to be interesting is doing what's called the intertestament period, but we'll save that for then. I think that's going to be in chapter 11. So and by the way, so chapter 7 verse 1 says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream with visions in his mind as he was lying on his bed. He wrote down the dream, and here is the summary of his account. So again, what we have is in chapter 6, you have Belshazzar. Chapter 6 is his final night on the planet, right? His final night. Here we see the collection of the video down. So we go back, and he says he goes back to his first year, right? His first year. And I think we're going to cover several years of Belshazzar. Now, as I said, some people, if you read, and I did this last time with who Belshazzar is. So if you read some of your other translation, in chapter 6, I'm reading from the Holman Christian Standard Bible. So the Holman Christian Standard Bible refers to Belshazzar's predecessor, meaning Nebuchadnezzar. Then you see Daniel, who says to Belshazzar, in the days of your father. Now that's in different other translations, like the New King James translation, I know for one. The Holman Christian Standard says your predecessor. And as I said, when you come to these kind of differences, because one of my favorite translations is a Holman Christian Standard translation, then do I find any contradiction in this? And really the answer to that, to me, is no, I don't. I don't find any kind of contradiction. And I do say this, I'll let the scholars deal with this. If I ever get a chance, and sometimes it's a lot because again, the Holman Christian Standard translation is my preferred standard. I mean, my preferred translation. One of the translators is Michael Deck, and sorry, Mike, I know that just butchered your name. He has a call-in radio show, and I can call in and ask, hey, why did you guys translate? Why did you translate this? And he'll explain it. Okay, they will explain it. So my point is, that's why you see sometimes the question that we have to have: who is Belshazzar? And even in the New King James translation, you see Belshazzar as referring to that Nebuchadnezzar's father, which some scholars will say it is his grandfather. And because I do a simple, plain reading teaching, I don't get as deep into I don't get that deep into the scholarly work. As I said, I leave that for I leave that for the work of the um, uh, I'll leave that for the work of the scholars. However, let me just see here. Uh, so it is believed, just a little background here, it's believed that he kind of reigned from maybe 556 to 539 BC, maybe. And then it says he was the last king. We knew that. And then it says here again, most scholars believe he is the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. So again, very interesting study, right? Very interesting study if you want to break this down. That a lot of scholars believe he is the grandson. So when we get to chapter 4, remember, we see the end of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. And now we see in chapter 5, that was Belshazzar's. Actually, I made a mistake. Belshazzar this would correspond with chapter 6. I made a mistake when I said chapter 6. This prophecies correspond with chapter 5 with Belshazzar. So let me correct that. Because Belshazzar is in within chapter 5, the handwriting on the wall. Chapter 6, we pass from the Babylonian kingdom into the kingdom of Babylon. So my mistake there. Now, when we get into the next study, we're going to get into his dream. Again, a fascinating study. All right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome.